my womb, trusting the Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode on the Healing Her Story podcast. My name is Riva Jean Paul. I'm a trauma informed somatic practitioner, coach for women, and host for your show. And I'm really excited and delighted to be joined by the incredible Kim Stevens today. Kim is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and she also specializes in trauma recovery and somatics. We have a lot of things in common, and I'm always just really grateful to be able to spend time with Kim in any way I can. I'll do a little intro and then I'll turn things over to Kim to get us started. Kim is a holistic licensed psychotherapist specializing in somatic modalities, mindfulness based therapies, internal family systems, dance and movement therapy, and trauma healing. It is one of her greatest joys to support and guide others toward true empowerment and deep connection with their authenticity, as well as break codependent patterns and heal from narcissistic abuse. Additional areas of focus include psychedelic assisted therapy, LGBTQ+, and highly sensitive and empathic folks. Kim is also a public speaker, workshop leader, sound healing facilitator, and neuro emotional technique certified practitioner. Yes. Everyone, welcome Kim to the podcast. Welcome, Kim.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so happy to have you with us. All right, Kim. Well, I know that you were feeling inspired to guide us all in just a brief grounding exercise as we are going to be talking a lot about the body today. So, would
Mhm.
you like to go ahead and lead us through that?
Yeah, I would love that.
Great.
Yeah, so in the name of trauma-informed somatic modalities, I thought we could first, just wherever you are, you can do this with your eyes open too, but just kind of check in with your body. And if you're like, what the heck does that mean? You can just notice physical sensations in your body, like tension and tightness anywhere. You could notice where your body's making contact with your clothing or whatever you're sitting on. Just kind of noticing how that feels like physically right now. And then we're going to try this. It's a technique for kind of relaxing the whole nervous system. And you'll actually see I remember seeing Olympic swimmers do this a lot because it's good for athletes too, to like kind of fix your brain before kind of resetting your system before you do something really strenuous. So basically, you can shake your arms out. You can also like give your hips a wiggle and just kind of like let everything loose and like shake, maybe relax your jaw. Take a deep breath and then exhale with the sound like ah.
Ah,
And then you can relax, stop. And then just either with eyes open or closed, just notice how your body feels now. Noticing if anything's different, if anything's more easeful, or if you're noticing anything different. Great. And then one more deep, full breath in. It's all right.
wonderful. Thank you for that, Kim. Very simple, which I think is a great thing for people to see and maybe even experience if you were following along with that as we're sort of starting this conversation, how simple it can be to connect with your body. Not always easy, but simple.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. We want to start with simple and gentle for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Wonderful. Well, now that we're all feeling a little bit more grounded, perhaps, and hopefully a little bit more connected with ourselves, let's go ahead and get into today's discussion. Kim, I would love for you to share a little bit about your story and what led you to somatic trauma therapy.
Yes. So I'm not really sure why I am this way, but when I was about 12, I got really curious about Buddhism and started like reading about it. And it made a lot of sense to me and really connected to me in terms of like why I was suffering so much. Like I remember being in middle school and just kind of looking around. I had this one memory of just like looking around like the concrete, quad and just seeing like kids being mean to each other and like girls being anorexic and boys making fun of girls and like everyone just being, it just felt like there was so much chaos and panic and suffering. And I was like, this can't be how we're designed to be. Like feels like there's something very out of alignment here. And I know I'm suffering. I knew I was suffering in that moment. And a lot of my friends were. And it just didn't make sense to me. So I started kind of studying Buddhism and got into like Louise Hay and just a lot of metaphysical healing stuff. And I actually struggled a lot with like autoimmune problems and health problems when I was a kid and a teenager. And as I was like on my journey learning about different healing modalities, so originally I wanted to be an acupuncturist and a naturopathic medical doctor. But the more I got into and was healing my physical ailments, I was like, these are all connected to like emotions for me. Like it was always a big emotional release. There was always like emotional, I don't think I knew the word trauma yet, but there was always like a lot of emotional stuckness associated with them. And I found that if I could be more self-expressive or do this healing around my emotions and my beliefs about myself, then my physical symptoms naturally like would relieve themselves. And I had gone to like Stanford specialists, like I was really not doing good in a health department. And when I started healing my emotions and getting more into the mind and the power of the mind, um, that's when my physical symptoms started healing. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. So that's why I kind of went more into um, learning how to heal trauma and really studying and studying in my own body and also with all the texts that are out. Like, what does it mean to experience trauma? How does that show up in the body? How does it get stuck in the body? How do we find it and release it so we can be unstuck and not depressed and miserable or, in old patterns and that kind of thing. So, yeah, that's kind of the long and short of it. So I've just been trying to find what works. It's like
Yeah.
being human can be hard. It can also be great and it can also be very hard and challenging and filled with yeah, suffering, and that can be a part of life too. So I'm just always looking for like what really works. What's like the way to make this work? And how can I thrive in like my most authentic form and help other people do that?
Yeah, really beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. And I find it so interesting that you came to Buddhism at such a young age. As I've been studying somatics too, I have seen that connection between Buddhist meditation and somatics. So it's interesting to see that people were kind of doing this stuff centuries ago, and kind of what you've named here is just the effectiveness of it, one, and also I lost my train of thought there for a moment, the connection, and then also oh man, I'll have to if it comes back, I'll mention it. But yeah, really lovely to hear that you found this path so early in life too. I think that's great. I found it much later in life, so I love that you were at 12. You were already being like,
Yeah,
something's a
come
little
on
off
here. Really sucks. It shouldn't be this. Yeah,
here.
something's really off with everything.
Yeah, yeah, such a keen sense you have, which doesn't surprise me, knowing who you are and being the projector that you are. Yeah, you were tuned in a long time ago.
Mhm.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I know that many people in the healing space have probably heard the phrase, you have to heal it or you have to feel it to heal it. What does that actually mean in the context of trauma healing?
Yes, I love this question because we've heard a lot of these phrases, and a lot of people know conceptually, like, I need to feel my feelings.
Right.
But, like, how the actual F do we do that? And, like, I used to totally not know, and I sincerely wanted to figure it out and just didn't know how. So, how I like to think about this is actually instead of like feeling the feeling as a goal, it's like holding the feeling as a goal. So where we actually feel a feeling like in our body and help it kind of complete its biological cycle of being felt and then sort of releasing out of the nervous system. What that looks like is we're acknowledging it. And I always do this because I do parts work as a therapist, and yeah, I'm always holding it. Like
I
it
love
helps.
it.
It like the feeling that I'm experiencing, if you imagine you could hold it in your hand and like get curious about it, that's a big one. Be
Hmm.
curious about it as best you can, come to it with curiosity and kind of releasing the judgments that you might have about it, which I know that's easier said than done, but it's a practice. And acknowledging it as this feeling is a part of me. It's not all of who I am, it's not the core of who I am, but it's valuable information and it's here for a reason. Like feelings are never here for a useless reason, ever. Like they're a part of our biology and they're communicating useful information to us. And we really don't know what that is until we hold them. And sometimes it's like a big revelation and we're like, oh, big release. And other times we kind of don't know. We just know that we were able to witness it and hold it. And then it kind of whoop, and we feel a little bit more free or a little bit more connected to ourselves. So yeah, I really like thinking about it like just imagine holding your feeling and getting curious about it. Um, and acknowledging it as a part of you. And that also pulls us into mindfulness when we do that, which is really a huge core aspect of how we actually feel a feeling. Ironically, is to kind of separate ourselves from it enough to look at it. And we're not dissociating from it, not that kind of separation, but that kind of separation and that observing of it, that holding actually allows more capacity for us to have a lot of compassion and empathy and forgiveness towards it and towards that part of ourselves, which allows that kind of freedom and release. And we're also feeling it physically in the body. That's a big part of it. Like a lot of us, I know I used to be this way. We just kind of live here up
Yeah.
and we live in the head and we intellectualize everything and figure everything out and fix our feelings by figuring them out.
Right.
And that's a survival strategy and can serve us to a point. But when it comes to really moving out of old patterns and old stuck belief systems that don't serve us anymore, like if we're just feeling low grade, not good enough all the time, for example, that's kind of a common one. We need to like really feel it in the body as physical sensation. And going slow is always key. So, yeah, really going slow with getting in touch with what it feels like physically in your body. Like I like calling it microdosing feelings when we're first starting it. So like doing 30 seconds of noticing how you feel it and then like go for a walk and forget about it kind of a thing. So modulating back and forth between feeling things, especially if you're new to getting in touch with your body. And then going on a walk, like in nature, for example, where you're seeing the beauty and awe, and it's kind of taking you into that relaxed nervous system state. And yeah, kind of modulating back and forth like that could be really helpful.
Yeah, I love that. I really like your analogy of just holding it.
Yeah, like a little baby or a little
Yeah.
cute puppy. Like with my kid clients, I'm like, it's a puppy, you know? And then it's like, oh, if it's a puppy, I can be kind to it. And I can see that it's
Yes.
just a scared little puppy and it needs some
Right.
attention and some care. It doesn't need me to like tell it to get over itself. Like that doesn't work, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, really beautiful analogy. And also I think something important to note here too, taking things really slow and modulating between feeling things and then, like you said, maybe going on a walk out in nature, doing something that can really ground and down regulate our nervous system after we've perhaps maybe felt something that was new or uncomfortable.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
It's wonderful. I remember the last thing I was going to share that floated away. It came
Oh,
back.
sweet.
I'll pop it in here. You mentioned that when you started doing more of that inner exploration, that your physical sensations or your physical symptoms rather started to subside.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful that you've named that here because I think that is something that we don't always think of as a way to work with our physical symptoms is actually going inside and seeing what emotions might be contributing to those physical sensations. So
Mhm.
really grateful that you mentioned that because I think it's an important piece that people don't always necessarily understand that like a tightness in the chest might not be connected to a physical cause. It might be grief that is manifesting as discomfort in the chest.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's a really common one is that tightness in the chest or like shoulder tightness and also jaw clenching.
Yeah.
Because all of that is like the fight response or like tightness in the hips. It's like you're ready to fight or freeze. So that can be kind of a cue to us that there is some emotional stuckness.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the jaw and the shoulders. Yeah,
Yeah.
I work with
Yeah.
those areas
Same.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Why do you think it's so difficult for many women to feel emotions and sensations? And how does trauma disconnect us from our bodies?
Yeah. I could talk. I could have an entire podcast on
Yeah,
this. I feel like we
maybe
could
we'll do
also,
another one. Yeah.
we could literally talk on this forever. Um, So a lot of us have good girl conditioning. We're actually like, if we're talking about binary gender, which is kind of how our society functions as of today for the most part. Like women and girls we're rewarded for ignoring our bodily cues.
Mhm.
Um, like if we um like the amount of times I've heard women say, and I've done this in the past too, of like a woman who is actively being assaulted and she didn't scream or run or say something because she's been so successfully conditioned to uh, tiptoe around the other person's ego and not provoke them, not hurt their feelings, not embarrass them.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us as women can think of a time when we did that. And it's like a knee jerk reaction. It's like it was like a trauma response that has been passed down for hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands at this point of years in our DNA. Like, I really think it's at this point almost like a generational somatic memory and survival strategy.
Mm.
And it's really recent, um, at least in like our history, where women have had more rights. And we haven't had to literally shut down that part of us that's saying, oh my God, no, gross, get away. Because if we did that, a lot of the time it wasn't safe and we had to kind of shut down and survive. But also in simple ways, like when we're little kids, like being like if we just get creepy vibes from someone and, like a parent is like, oh, be polite, like be sweet and polite. Or like a guy gives us a super creepy, gross compliment. And we're like, in our inner senses, like,
Yeah.
but he's like, he and maybe even society at large or other people in our life are saying, don't be rude, don't be a bitch.
Mhm.
So we're getting shown this, yeah, this unconsciously since I think, I mean, at least for me, I can speak for myself since I was, born pretty much, this message that it's more important for me to be perceived as polite and kind and always giving at the detriment of my own body, my own needs, my own intuition. And in fact, I'm rewarded for it,
Yeah.
which is like to me, just like a sickness. That's such the sickness of patriarchy. So it takes often a long time and a lot of just deep, relentless commitment to gentleness with ourselves for like it's a whole process of forgiving ourselves for all the times we, in big ways or tiny ways, abandon ourselves in order to maintain connection with the perceived other or keep ourselves safe.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like if we didn't abide to giving the guy our number, it could have been like really unsafe, so we just did it. Um, So a lot of that is really real. And I think also a lot of women just on top of that get gaslit out of it and told, oh, you're being dramatic or that's not really that bad or it's not really real or you're being blah, blah, blah. So it's like on top of that, we're getting that. It just kind of shuts us down on a pretty deep level. Um, yeah, and also like growing up for me, like it was the 90s, it's like the age of anorexia.
Yeah.
Like I look at, oh my God, the shows.
Yeah.
Dude, like Friends, The L Word.
Mm.
I just started watching Dexter and his sister. Like, how is it physically possible for someone to be that thin and not just die as,
Right.
as a woman? And we were rewarded for ignoring our hunger, like totally rewarded. Oh, look at you, you're so good. I was told that all the time by
Wow.
women older than me and people around me. Like, I'd be like, oh, I'm not hungry, or I'm not having dessert, and they'd be like, oh, you're so good, or like, oh, you're a size
Wow.
two. Ah, good for you. Like
Wow.
it's can be subtle, it can be loud, but it's like that's getting into our consciousness. So yeah, I would also love to hear what you have to say on this topic because I know there's a lot of different angles to talk
I
about.
mean, I'm just gonna double down on everything that you just said. It's like it starts so young and it has been going on for literally centuries. I talk a little bit about this in the first episode, how from just the way that we care for women, there has been this tendency to ignore women's experiences. I've heard
Yes.
countless stories of women going to doctors who, we are
Mm-hmm.
told that are there to help us. And women go to doctors and explain to them what their symptoms are and what they're experiencing, and they're dismissed, they're invalidated, they're told that what they're experiencing is all in their mind. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that also too can have a really big impact on women's abilities to not only connect with their bodies, but to trust their bodies. When you
Yes.
have someone in power telling you that what you're feeling and what you're experiencing is wrong.
Mm-hmm. That's such a good example. Yeah. And I also know so many women who have been shamed and just dismissed by their doctors. I
Yeah.
mean, women have died from that because they knew that they had a
Wow.
tumor or whatever, and the doctor ignored or was like, "Oh, it's stress," or I don't know, whatever they say. And
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. It reminds me too of when I was growing up as a young girl, I was bullied a lot for my weight. And I think that can have an impact to these societal standards of, what a body is supposed to look like.
Right.
And I would go to my mom and I would, let her know I would be crying that, I was made fun of at school today. And acknowledging that my mom, did the best with the resources and the understanding that she had. And she would always tell me to, oh, don't worry about it. Just ignore them, Reba. And so
Mm,
from a very young age, I started internalizing, oh, okay, like it's not okay for me to like be sad and be upset. Like I need to ignore these feelings or shove them down in some way. And I think for me, that also really perpetuated this tendency to just not feel, to not
mm,
allow my emotions to be what they are.
mm.
And it had a really big impact on my teenage years, all the way into my adult years, really, until I started coming to this work.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great example. I'm so glad you shared that because I think that's something that so many of us can relate to, and I certainly can. I just want to like grab all our little inner teenagers and like,
Yeah,
it's
love
just
on
so
them.
heartbreaking. But yeah, it's like that. That's such a great example of when our feelings we start to learn to shut down and invalidate and hide ourselves from our own feelings.
Yep,
Because it's like, oh, this feeling isn't okay, or
right.
I'm getting punished for it, or getting rejected for it or whatever. And then, like you said before, it starts to train us to not trust ourselves, trust our feelings, our instincts, our responses, what our body's telling us about what's
Right.
okay, what's not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh man, goes so deep.
it does. It goes so deep, like thousands of years deep. This is another thing I just thought of when you were talking was like I think I feel deeply and I felt this for a few years maybe. And I honestly feel like this is why I incarnated on this planet during this time. But like sacred female rage is having a comeback. And if you
Hmm.
think about for women in particular, like what's the one of the things we're not allowed to feel and express, right?
Sure.
Anger
Yeah.
or even a no.
Yeah. Hmm.
And anger, I think about is like it's the emotion that's our internal no, it's our internal boundary. Anger is signaling to us like, whoa, a boundary's been crossed. I don't feel safe. Something is like very not okay.
Yeah.
And we're totally celebrated for being like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, that's totally fine that you just, whatever the violation was.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's like that process of getting in touch with that inner rage, and that inner no, and that wisdom of,
Hmm.
oh, this doesn't feel good. This is not okay. You're violating human rights right now.
Yeah.
Because women, I mean, generally speaking, gender is like a whatever thing. But generally speaking, I have noticed people with uteruses tend to have deep felt sense of what's right and wrong on like a humanitarian level. And it could just, I don't know, maybe it's the people I tend to hang out with too. But um, like if you can shut down a woman's internal sense of right and wrong and like her rage, you've got complete control, you know?
Oh,
So
yeah.
like
Wow.
reigniting, I think one of the best things female bodied people and also female identifying people can do is start to gently get in touch with that rage because it's sacred.
Yes.
Like it's sacred. It's what has you protect other humans.
Hmm?
It's what has you protect your babies.
Yep.
It can destroy and create worlds.
Really.
And I feel like, yeah, that's just a huge part of what's gonna help a lot of people. And like, I don't want to be dramatic, but like save the planet. In a lot of ways is like women getting in touch with their rage again and really embodying that on a physical level because a lot's trapped in there. And one of my teachers actually said recently, which I thought this was really interesting, that in her workshops when she starts asking all the women about like have you been, when was the time you didn't speak, you had rage or anger or a no and you didn't speak because you're trying to people please or you're afraid of the consequence or
Yep.
someone was gaslighting you, whatever.
Yeah.
And usually the energy, everyone's saying, I was molested and this guy did this and this person did this and this boss did this. Everyone starts talking about my mother did this, all of this stuff. And the energy in the room gets really heavy and everyone starts yawning. And
Oh,
she talks about
interesting.
it like the consequence of suppressed rage is like exhaustion and disconnection.
Oh,
So, oh, it's just giving me goosebumps right
I
now.
can feel
But
it too.
a great cue somatically for you and like women and people who have women in your lives, and also this applies to all genders, is chronic exhaustion, chronic fatigue, chronic disconnection from self. A lot of the time can be like righteous, sacred rage that is still in there in you, that is waiting to come out and like give you your boundaries and your empowerment back.
Mm,
And you've been keeping it, for good reason, safely kind of tucked.
right.
But yeah, anyway, I'll stop there. That's my
Yeah, no, that's a whole nother episode too,
yeah.
isn't it? Yeah, there's a lot of you're saying a lot of important things here. And I know in my sessions when I'm working with clients, anytime anger comes up, I'm celebrating it. I'm looking for it because you're so right. Like anger it lets us know what is and what isn't okay.
Yes.
And we want to celebrate that. Like, oh, yes, okay, I'm angry. I know this is a no for me. And it informs us how to respond. It lets us know where our limits are and where our boundaries are. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah, we could really do a whole nother episode about this. One thing that I will say about this, there's this woman who I absolutely love. Her name's Mia Magic. She's a witch,
Mhm.
an intuitive consultant, and she does online rituals and retreats and all sorts of things. I watch a lot of her videos on YouTube. Really enjoy her work. She does these sacred rage rituals at her retreats, and maybe one year we'll make it happen for ourselves. She does
Let's
do some out
go.
in Southern California, or excuse me, Northern California in the Redwoods. And she's done two on TV actually. I forget where the first one was, like what network it was on, but I was watching one of her videos last night and she had mentioned that she was on like CBS or something like that. And she led a rage ritual on the news. So yeah, I was like,
That's
okay.
amazing.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's
I'm definitely gonna check
normalize
her out.
our sacred rage and our anger. It's very
Yeah,
important. Now we want to use that anger in a regenerative way where
correct.
it's not only informing us, but we're using that anger to make change essentially that not only benefits ourselves, but benefits the people around us as well. I know I've
That,
had a lot of fun just channeling my rage into my art, and it's been
Mhm.
really freeing, really freeing.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad you said that because, yeah, like there's the difference between feeling your anger and being violent, right? Like
Mhm.
that's that the being violent is obviously not what we're going for.
Right.
And obviously that's very destructive, but feeling and embodying your rage and letting the emotion of that that's stuck come out. Yeah. I love channeling it through art, and like dance is a good one.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
you can kind of channel that energy into a lot of stuff that might surprise you that doesn't even necessarily look like anger.
Totally. Yeah, I've seen someone online post about coloring. She colors when she's angry,
Cool.
which I thought was cool. And one small thing that I do, it's not necessarily always anger, but like just irritation. Whenever I notice it, if myself, I would notice like if something happens. It happened yesterday. I forget what it was. Something small, right? But it annoyed me, and I could feel that kind of, anger starting to bubble up a little bit. I just grr.
Nice.
I just kind of do it with myself. Like I don't do it. I'm just like, "Grr," and I like, sometimes I'll tense my hands up and I'll just let myself have that moment. It's a
Yeah.
short moment of just
Yeah.
like actually like allowing my anger and my irritation to be there without being like, oh, get over it. It's not a big deal. I mean, I might get there next, but I'm first like, okay, moving on.
Right. Right. I
Giving
love
it
that.
a
That's
moment.
great.
Yeah. So many good things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit more about just kind of understanding the somatic approach a little bit. That was a nice segue.
Mhm.
How does somatic therapy differ from traditional talk therapy?
Yeah. So, somatic, soma coming from Latin. I don't know, actually, the word soma meaning body.
Yeah.
So, somatic therapy really just incorporates the body. To me, it's like how therapy and healing work should always be or should have always been. But of course, Western therapy started with like white dudes. So,
Yeah.
of course, it started with like this part of your
Correct.
situation. So, but yeah, I think we can really take the lead too from indigenous people who have been working with the body as it's an integral part of the whole system. Like we cannot separate mind from body, and listening to the wisdom of the body is a huge resource in any kind of healing work, in my opinion. I also think this is really cool, which is a lot of different psychologists have talked about this. I think Carl Jung was one of them that was really into this concept that the body like is the unconscious mind, or the body is the expression of the unconscious mind. The body is the house of the unconscious. So what your conscious mind can bypass, your body's going to show you. And I personally believe this is why a lot of women have autoimmune disorders. This is why we have muscle tension. Um, this is why we have unexplained illnesses a lot of the time. If you ignore it for long enough, your body will show you.
Mhm.
That's why it's so helpful to just do little check-ins with your body to give it the attention that it needs because it's constantly communicating to us. Um, and with somatic therapy too, like a lot of the time I'll ask my clients, like, where do you feel that in your body? How do you feel towards that sensation in your body? Like that's a really classic prompt to ask with parts work in somatic therapy. And also, feelings happen physically in the body. I think a lot of us don't realize that. We think that emotions are like in our head and who cares about them? We can just kind of whatever and move on with our life. But when we think about them as feelings, as physical sensations in the body that actually need to be released physiologically, and that doesn't mean that like you have to like punch stuff every time you're angry, but what that can often look like is you're just giving it your attention. So, for example, I can place my attention on my right finger, like my attention is there. I can place attention on a really riveting story that someone is telling me. I can also place my attention on, like, noticing that my breath is always shallow. And I think it's been that way for almost all my life. And placing my attention there, it's kind of like giving it the consciousness that it needs to start to free itself from the stuckness it's in. Um, is there anything else I want to say about somatic therapy? There's a lot, but yeah, our body doesn't lie. Our mind can hide things from us, but our body's going to tell us what's up.
Mhm.
So that's why it can be really helpful to go to where do you feel that in your body? Like where are you feeling tension in your body right now? Because that again, that's kind of the unconscious mind starts to manifest itself in our body through physical sensations and tension and tightness and stuff, which is, I think, really cool.
Yeah, I think it's really cool too. And I wrote down what you said, and I believe you said it was Carl Jung. The body is the unconscious mind. And so whatever we're not dealing with in our mind, it's going to show up in the body.
Right.
Yeah. And my teacher, Tira Tan, she says the body is the ultimate truth barometer. And
Mm,
I've been teaching this to my students that I work with as well, and my teaching artist residencies. And I'm telling them, your body is always communicating, even if you aren't using words. Your body is doing things to communicate both with you and with people around you. And
yes.
that's always going to give us the most accurate information because our mind is a wonderful storyteller and it loves
Hmm.
to make things up and
Hmm.
think itself out of things. But the body doesn't do that. The body really expresses its truth when we really
Yes.
listen to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we can really see this in little kids.
Hmm.
Like if a little kid is shy, they can't hide it. They might try to, but they're still going to be like
Yep.
I'm totally fine.
Yeah.
Like kids can't hide it, and we just get way better at hiding it and kind of
Yeah.
severing ourselves from those internal cues in our body because a lot of the time we're rewarded for it or survival or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, also artist residency program.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've been working part-time for this organization off and on since 2019, and recently in a season where I'm working with them a lot more. Right now,
Mm.
I have two residencies, about 7 classes a week, working with kindergartners, all the way up to fifth graders this semester. And I weave a lot of the somatic stuff in my classes. I'm there to teach
Oh, I
dance,
bet you
but
do.
like to me in my heart and in my bones, I know that I'm not really there to teach dance. I'm there to help kids be in their body. I'm there to be a calm
Mhm.
and regulated nervous system for them to regulate with. I'm
Yes.
there to, yeah, kind of like usher in all of the things that we're kind of naming here today
Mhm.
into our little generation that is going to grow up to be our future, essentially. Planting
Yeah.
little seeds.
Oh, that's so amazing. Oh my God, they're so lucky to have you. That's like one of the greatest things anyone could do, I feel.
Thank you. Yeah, it brings me a lot of joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many wonderful things said in that little mini discussion as well. And all right, so next question. How can someone begin to trust their body again if they've been conditioned to ignore or override their sensations?
Ooh, yes. Really, really good point. I think one of a big part of this is getting really real with yourself about why you got really good at or why you started the habit of disconnecting from your body.
Mm, okay.
I think a lot of the time, especially in my work and especially with women, well, all genders actually, but the we double down on the self-blame.
Mhm.
Like when we start doing this work, a lot of the time we can look at, oh, I'm so disconnected from my body, or like I've been doing this for like 40 years, or whatever it is. And we use that as another reason to kind of hate on ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, so the first thing being like your system is so brilliant. Like when you were a little kid, you were picking up on like a absolutely ludicrous amount of information in your environment and the world around you and all the places you went on like an unconscious level and assimilating all of it and figuring out how do I respond to everything and harmonize with everything around me, no matter how chaotic or scary or boring or whatever it is, in order to best survive and get my needs met. And little kids, like the amount of information they take in and how fast their brain is growing is like absolutely mind boggling. So truly to the best of your ability, you were responding to what was happening in the most brilliant way possible. Now, when we're responding to things that are happening that are unsafe or feel unsafe or don't feel good, and we're not getting our needs met, we're going to develop coping mechanisms that probably aren't going to save us later on in life, where when we're an adult with our own rights and ability to like be a separate human and not depend on, these people that are giving us literal sustenance.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing is to just really acknowledge, like, whoa, like I did that. I survived that. Like I harmonized with that totally bonkers person or totally bonkers situation or like impossible thing. Or I was able to hide memories that big from myself so that I could survive. Like that's truly like amazing. And yes, it's also tragic and can be like awful and very sad. And also, it's quite, in the literal sense of the word, brilliant. Like for like our systems, like we can hide memories from ourselves in order to stay alive and keep surviving. Like that's just incredible. And those memories tend to bubble up and resurface when our system internally knows we're capable of reprocessing them now. Like
Mm.
it's just wild. So the first thing is, yeah, like just be open to forgiving yourself for how you coped when you were younger, like how you brilliantly coped with an impossible situation or just a challenging situation when you were younger. Um, okay, I went on a little tirade. Now I forget your original question.
That was beautiful. Yeah, that was really beautiful. And that's something that I always try to instill in people that I'm working with too, is like just how wise our system truly is. And all of that happened at a subconscious level. We weren't like using our mind to actively think of like, okay, how am I going to keep myself safe in this situation? Our bodies just do what they do.
Yep.
And by a miracle, they were able to keep us safe. So I think that's really important piece that you named here. And it can be a nice segue into like what are some signs that trauma is stored in the body and how might listeners recognize this within themselves?
Yes, this is a great question. And whenever I lay these out or like do a video on these, I'm every time people are like, "Oh my God!" Like I all of these, and I had no idea. But chronic pain, tension, kind of what we talked about before, like the when we're stuck in a chronic fight, flight, or fawn response. So chronic fawn response can look like chronic people pleasing. I used to do this. I used to blow myself away. Like when, like there's a couple situations someone was being overtly, like I was okay, but something was happening that was overtly violent or like abusive or not okay. And how quickly I fawned and how well I did it was like kind of terrifying to me, but also like, whoa, like there's a survival mechanism or a trauma response.
Yeah.
So there's the fawn, which can look like the chronic people pleasing fight response. So that's the jaw tension. I feel like me and all my friends have night guards. A lot of us are still working on this stuff, but like the chronic jaw tension, this kind of like literally, if you think about like you're going to fight and like tight
Yeah.
hips can be a big one.
Okay.
Um, and the other one is like they call it a dorsal vagal shutdown, which is basically a part of the nervous system. If you're in chronic freeze, like if your best response for dealing with the thing was to like freeze and get quiet or whatever, that can look like chronic fatigue, chronic exhaustion, and maybe you've gotten all the blood tests and all the things, and everyone's like, "Well, you're fine." That can be kind of a sign. And just yeah, holding chronic pain in the body that maybe doesn't have a medical explanation or chronic illness that just does not have a medical explanation. Also hypersensitivity to stimuli. So you're just like chilling, having a conversation with someone and a door shuts a little loud and you like freak out, you know, like if your nervous system is that, like you're kind of, it's almost like the wire's always live. I think about it like that. Um, yeah, I've seen people do this a lot where it's like just life doing life and a little sound happens or someone touches them, you know, someone they know, they trust comes up behind them and touches on them on the shoulder before they expect it. And the reaction's really big. So kind of that hypersensitivity to stimuli can be one thing. Yeah. And then Gabor Mate talks a lot about this, which I just love that he wrote a book that's like this freaking thick on, I think it's, yeah, that one's called The Myth of Normal. And he talks about how often in his practice he would see people with stuck emotional trauma who are suppressing their emotions and their feelings and not feeling them, which is like a form of shutdown. How often they have autoimmune disorders.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
for me, that was a lot of what I struggled with as a kid. And I was finding by trial and error, oh my God, this is trauma. Like,
Mhm.
oh my God, this is patriarchy.
Yeah.
Like, this is, I'm feeling internalized depression and it's literally shutting down my immune system
Yeah.
because I'm coping with it and I'm agreeing with it and I mean, it's wild how our bodies respond to these things. But it makes sense because if we're experiencing a kind of trauma and our nervous system is essentially being chronically dysregulated,
Right.
that's going to absolutely impact the rest of our body because our nervous system is connected to all of our organs and how they function.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I can think of it's making me think of this chart, this chart that one of my teachers used in a training, and I'm sure it's a chart that you've seen as well. And it's based off of polyvagal theory. But what I really like about it is that it shows, or rather, it lists like what's happening biologically when we're in each state, and when we're in the overwhelmed state, it really does impact the way we're able to digest food. It
Yes,
impact,
exactly.
yes, yeah, it affects our immune system and really inhibits our ability to be able to fight off viruses and diseases.
Hmm.
And there's a bunch of other things that list as well, but I really found that fascinating. And I try to share that with my clients so that they can understand like what's happening on a biological level when we not that it's our fault that we're in these states, and when we are noticing them and we're not necessarily working with them and moving through them, it can really leave a really significant impact on our overall mental and physical well-being.
Hmm. That's so great. Yeah, thanks for bringing that piece in. That really just like completed the circle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a biological thing that happens. And when you understand the biology, you're like, "Oh my God, this is real." And it makes so much sense.
Mhm.
Because also people with trauma, the correlation of them having digestive problems and or autoimmune is huge. It's a huge, very seeable correlation. And yeah, that's one of the, like you said, one of the first things to get biologically impacted is the digestive system.
Yeah. Yeah, and I recognize all of these within myself, and I'm at a point now where I feel like I've gotten, I don't know if getting a handle on it is the best expression to use, but I do feel like, okay, I'm at a point now where like my digestion system is flowing, and I'm having less stress and less chronic pain and tightness that I'm noticing in the body. And it can take a really long time to get there. And what I want to mention here is that I didn't even know that I had trauma for many years.
Yeah.
I
Right.
had issues with addiction before I started having like the really physical symptoms. I was just numbed out and just drunk and high on anything really for about a decade. And once I started learning about the biological component of it, that's when it kind of like something turned on and switched in my brain. I was like, oh, like I have trauma and I've had it for years and I've been trying to cope in various ways.
Right.
And it was popping out in all of these really interesting ways that we've already kind of named here today.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. That's another thing I feel like is so relatable.
Mhm.
And most, I think, I don't know if there's anyone I've worked with, honestly, that at some point doesn't go, oh my God, like that wasn't okay for me to experience. Or like I thought that happened to everyone, or everyone did that, or that's not trauma. Like we can even have a little bit of denial of like, no, like my childhood was great, my parents are great.
Yes.
That there can be a lot of that kind of internal guilt. And like too, I feel like what's important about that is we all have things we struggle with. Like our parents cannot, no human being can be perfectly attuned to the needs of another 100% of the time.
Right.
That's impossible. And also, um, yeah, not even necessary for our survival. And it can, to have some of our needs not met a little bit of the time can help us build resilience, but having big gaps can also lead to trauma and have us be more shut down and get into cycles of that. But this doesn't mean that you didn't have great parents or a great
Right.
teacher or society was great to you. Like it just means that you're human, you're an animal, and we all experience not getting our needs met in some capacity or being wounded or even misinterpreting what something meant about us when someone did something, because kids take
Mm.
very personally, and we because our that front part of our brain that can critically think and make decisions is literally not developed
Right.
until really after the age of 7 and 12, and not fully developed till we're 25. So we tend to take things really personally and think that, oh, if dad works really late, that's because I'm not worthy of love, or whatever we make it mean. So it could also just be these kind of beliefs and misinterpretations we created too when we were kids.
Yeah, 100%. I'm really glad that you mentioned that. That's something that I've experienced. And just recently, in the past month over this winter break, I visited my family, and my parents are divorced. And when my dad lives in Southern California and my mom now lives in Colorado. So I went and saw them both separately. And I've had some challenges with the relationships with both of my parents over the years. And as I said, I'm kind of at that point where I feel like, okay, like this is okay. And I remember coming home after visiting my dad, and I think I was just doing a morning yoga practice or something. And I just started bawling because I like had this thought. I was like, oh, like my parents love me and support me. And I had created this story years ago that my parents didn't love me and didn't support me. And
Mm.
now here I am, 35 years old, years and years, decades later, something finally clicked where that story changed. And it was just a misunderstanding. And sure, I wasn't attuned to, and some of my needs weren't met, and there were things that were very hurtful that I went through. And my parents love me and support me. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that because that was something that I myself experienced recently.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and sometimes it just clicks, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I'm sure that that's an accumulation of this huge
Yes.
amount of work, like
Yes.
this huge amount of work. And then we
Yeah.
don't have control over when one day it's like, beep,
Yeah.
and we get that little, oh my God, that revelation or whatever. But it often comes randomly when we're doing yoga on our dad's
Yeah.
floor, like
Yeah.
whatever.
Hmm.
That's so beautiful. And I love
Yeah.
you speak to the complexity of the truth of that. It's
Hmm.
like this yes and. It's not, demonizing what happened versus it was perfect. It's like all of it, and
Yes.
holding the complexity of the human experience is a lot. And that's also something we can practice building the nervous system capacity for, is holding all these different, sometimes seemingly really opposing truths in
Hmm.
giant experience.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
History.
The human experience is very complex.
Indeed.
Yeah. Hmm. Okay, well, we're slowly coming towards the end of the episode, and I want to start offering some kind of practical things that people can potentially play with and explore if they're feeling moved by this episode and they're like, okay, I understand that I need to connect more with my body, I need to feel my feelings, but
Hmm.
how do we do that?
Mm.
So, how do you think that somatic healing can support those who are feeling stuck in cycles of burnout, people pleasing, and overdoing?
Yeah, such a great question. The good news is there are so many things we can practice to start, yeah, practically working with this. Um, One thing is, I think about it like kind of essentially one of the things we're practicing is learning how to be the present, connected, attuned adult
Mhm.
that we needed when we were younger, or the present, connected, attuned um, being to our own self. So that's essentially like a huge part, if not, I would say the core part of a lot of what we're doing with this healing work is, for example, instead of being like totally flooded and shut down by like these feelings I have of I'm not worthy, I'm never going to be good enough, oh my God, I'm trapped, how am I going to get out of this, I suck. Like being acknowledging that experience and that feeling as, again, like it's a part of me.
Mhm.
It's a part of me that's maybe been there for a long time and feels very, very real, but
Mhm.
it's not all of who I am. It's not the core of who I am. And it's actually something that I can get curious about and pay attention to and hear out. Like, why do you believe that? Oh, kitty. And practicing basically being the present, attuned, caring force, holding that experience and working with it and getting curious about it and integrating it and really investigating, is that actually true now? Or did that belief come from a place of, me trying to survive when I was younger or whatever? So that's a big part is, yeah, learning how to be that present, connected, attuned other.
Attune to me, the kitty says.
Right. Animals are so good for that too. That's why like equine therapy is so good, because
Yep.
horses are so sensitive and they
Yes.
feel our nervous system and attune to us, and it's very helpful. Um, The other thing I like is with this kind of work, especially if we have been shut down for a very long time or are really new to this kind of work, slower is always better, gentler is always better. I promise it's more effective.
Yes.
I know that sometimes we're like, oh, but I want to power through the healing and like get better as fast as I
Right.
can.
Hmm.
Awesome. I agree with you. I'm exactly the same way. I love efficiency and I'm also impatient. And I promise the best, most efficient way to do this stuff is gentle and
Hmm.
with like deep presence and attunement and
Hmm.
like really slowing down and getting as attuned and present with yourself as you can, as opposed to like blasting through exercises.
Yes.
And that also includes taking a lot of breaks. One thing I like that Pat Ogden, the creator of sensory motor psychotherapy, she's brilliant and awesome, and one of kind of the pioneers with trauma work and somatic therapy. She talks about kind of modulating between pleasant and unpleasant sensations. And we talked a little bit about this earlier, but that can be a great way to start, especially if you're kind of in chronic burnout, which is like even right now, like kind of everyone listening, just like feel into your body, like find one sensation anywhere that is either neutral or maybe even a little pleasant. And if you literally can't find one, like you could like pet your hand and focus on like what kind of touch feels most pleasant to me.
Mhm.
And that is a kind of a somatic therapy exercise. It's like how do we it's like training you to pay attention to how things feel in your body. Like it can, like you said at the beginning of this, it can be really, really simple. And building the kind of building blocks that allow us to then later deal with the bigger feelings and hold capacity for those. Like we're building capacity to get there. And
Mhm.
what's foundational is building that self compassion, like practicing being present and attuned towards our own self, which I know easier said than done. But if you need help with that, also you can find like an internal family systems therapist. I think they're really excellent for that. Or a therapist who's trauma informed. And also like getting in touch with sensations that feel pleasurable. Another one I love to do with my clients is like
Mhm.
humming, singing, yelling into a pillow, but like using the voice that actually relaxes the whole nervous system, which takes us out of fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And it can also be a way for us to start to get in tune with our nervous system responses and how our body feels. So essentially, it's like doing things that are pleasurable or neutral in the body, or finding sensations that are pleasurable and neutral. That's just as much of a great helpful exercise as it is like getting into the feelings that are challenging or that we want to do healing work around.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And that's something that I have noticed myself get stuck in the past is like thinking that like healing always needs to be like sad and hard and yeah, getting in there and like really working with like you said, just kind of getting in there and like just getting into all the stuff that doesn't always feel so great.
Yeah.
And we want to supplement that with feelings of neutral or pleasure because that's just as important too. We need these moments of kind of like reprieve
Mhm.
to let our bodies do what they need to do to catch up and to process and to digest. We can't always just be trying to heal all the time. And I think that can be a really easy trap to get stuck into, especially if you just start are on the beginning path of coming to this work. It's a tricky one, slippery
Totally
slope.
agree.
Hmm.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, like it can almost, I don't know if you relate to this, but for a while I feel like I just became addicted to healing.
Yeah,
It's just
totally.
another, it became another trauma
Yep.
response.
Yep.
And I had this huge aha moment once that I was coming at healing from a place of, oh, I'm not good enough.
Right.
Like I was coming from it from that energy. And I had this huge moment of like, oh my God, I'm like doing it, but like on in a fractal level. Like,
Hmm.
but also that was a great realization. And that's what I needed to do to get to where I needed to go.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also this little piece that kind of came through as you were sharing that of like wanting to connect with our bodies simply to connect, not necessarily to change. And so I feel like that's where I was for a long time. Was like I was coming to all my healing work wanting to change how I was feeling or wanting to change things about myself.
Definitely.
And it wasn't until I something switched, and this is just through all the support, through all the incredible teachers that I've had the honor to be supported and mentored by. It's like, oh no, 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 no. We're not trying to change. We're just trying to connect.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that. I need that on a bumper sticker. Not
Yes.
trying to change or fix, trying to connect.
Connect. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that trauma response brain is like, what do I need to fix? Like,
Yes.
where's the danger? What's wrong?
Yep.
And what do I need to fix? And that's so, and there's nothing wrong with that either. Like, that's also, we didn't do anything wrong if we fall into that. We don't need to
Right.
judge ourselves about that either. But yeah, I love that you pointed that out. I'm gonna write that down for
A
myself.
good one. Yeah, I forget who I originally heard it from. But yeah, I didn't come up with it. I heard it from, I'm gonna probably say a Tan is probably where I heard it from.
Mm,
She's
yeah.
great. Love her. Well, we've already kind of named a couple of things, but are there any other like simple everyday practices that people can start to use to reconnect with their body and their emotions?
Yeah. Simple inquiry questions like, how am I what am I feeling in my body right now? I know
Mhm.
that's really simple, but I'm still amazed at this. If I'm having like a busy day or a stressful day, I'm kind of amazed at how much I can sometimes still successfully compartmentalize.
Mhm.
And if I just give myself, sometimes it's got to be 15 seconds.
Mhm.
Like that's all it took for me to like be present with myself, feel my body, take a few deep breaths, realize I'm not breathing, realizing I'm clenching my jaw,
Yep.
and just giving myself maybe a shake or whatever, or like a ha. Like I love to just sing around my house. That really makes me relaxed. um and yeah, just putting, you can even do timers in your phone.
Mhm.
I'll do that with my clients because it's also good to be woken up out of your habitual stuck patterns. So it's one
Yeah.
thing to be like, oh, I just had the realization that I haven't drank water today and I need to take care of my bodily need and maybe like check in with how I'm feeling. But it's
Mhm.
kind of nice to actually have random reminders on your phone because it'll catch you in places where you wouldn't normally catch yourself.
Oh,
And you're like,
yeah.
oh, there's my reminder for 15 seconds, check in with my body. Maybe say like one thing I love to use with my clients, and this resonates with a lot of people, is like whatever I'm noticing, whatever's here, just for like the next 10 seconds, I'm going to practice not needing any of it to be any different.
Mhm.
Like nothing's wrong with what I'm feeling. Nothing is wrong with what's happening. I'm just going to practice not needing any of what I'm feeling to be any different, any more, or any less. And that was something that, like when I gave my TEDx talk, that was the part in my talk that so many people repeated back to me as the most helpful part. And it was so cool because I was like, whoa, this is like field research. I'm just like getting to learn like what resonates most with people. And like one lady came up to me crying, repeating that part to me.
Oh,
Like it's like this revelation to pause and be like, right now, nothing needs to be different. Like all my feelings, all my thoughts, all the tension, all of it's welcome, all of it's here right now. And not that we're like condoning it or saying it's going to be this way
right.
forever, but just that practice of this is what is right. This is what is right now. And I can imagine welcoming all parts of me and not needing them to be different. So
Hmm.
it could be a nice little exercise. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know for myself, I really noticed just a softening when I started really leaning into this mindset, or rather this shift of just like it being okay. Like whatever you're feeling is okay. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking of the welcome song is kind of playing in my head. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I think you should link that to this episode. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll do it. Yeah, there's a I put a meditation on Insight Timer with this sort of welcoming practice, and I sing the verse like 3 times or something like that, and there's the invitation for people to sing too if they want. And I always get really sweet reviews of people just feeling so touched by just this welcoming of all of them.
Hmm.
It's really beautiful. And I think that in my body, I notice a biological response. If I'm like, okay, like what I'm feeling isn't okay, there's like a tension, there's a constriction. And if I allow myself to just be okay and welcome all parts of myself as exactly as they are, then I can kind of like can relax a little bit. And our bodies then feel like they're in a more safe place too to authentically express and be how they are without us labeling it as wrong or not okay.
Hmm. Exactly. Oh, I love that. And also, if you attempt to welcome all parts of you and immediately there's resistance or there's like a no, I don't want to,
Yeah.
it's perfectly okay. Like
Mhm.
that's another part to welcome.
Yes.
Or like if just you're flooded with numbness, that's welcome too. That's
Yes.
okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Like there's truly whatever shows up, you can soften towards, even if it's literally a part of you that's resisting practicing
Mhm.
the exercise. And I think that's really where a lot of the beauty of internal family systems therapy is it's like literally whatever's here we can work with,
Yeah.
even resistance in itself. And also resistance is usually wisdom and like healthy skepticism that's coming from
Mhm.
a place with really good intentions trying to keep you safe.
Yeah, absolutely. We might have to do another episode on IFS one day too. I would love I love internal family systems.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I feel like you use it all the time. I can tell.
I do. Yeah, I haven't. One day I would love to do the program and, do the in-depth study of it. I've done little bits and pieces and
Cool.
reading the book and yeah, weaving in what I can.
Hmm.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, if a listener resonated deeply with today's conversation, what is one small step that they can take today to start this healing journey?
Mm. Well, if you've made it this far, I would say check in with your body in this moment,
Yes.
trusting that everything you felt physically during this entire episode is wisdom communicating to you.
Mhm.
and just see what you remember. Like what parts do you remember? And how did it feel in your body? Like how did it register in your body? Were there moments where you felt teary or tightness or like expansion? And like how would you describe that physically? Um, yeah, and that's how that journey starts. It's just really simply with that noticing and that curiosity and just intention for kindness towards self.
Yeah, I love that. That's something I've been doing as we've been talking, and something that I've built the habit of doing is just
Yes.
always tracking and noticing the sensations in my body. I'm not always naming them. Sometimes I do, especially if I'm, in a session or something, I'll, oh, I'm noticing a lot of emotion come up right now as you're sharing this, or um,
Mm,
even within myself in a non-professional setting, if I'm just like at home, like watching a show with my husband, and all of a sudden, like something touches me, I
yeah.
will name, like, oh man, like I'm noticing some emotion come up right now. So yeah, I think it would be a great idea and a gentle invitation for anyone who is really feeling like they want to do this work. Maybe re-listen to this episode now, knowing
Mm,
that, and see what you notice.
hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
Hmm.
Well, again, we're kind of reaching the end of our episode, and we'll close out with two questions here. And I'm wondering where people can find you and learn more about your work, Kim.
Yeah. Let's see. I've got socials. I think my website is something that I never delete. So that's always there. KimStevensTherapy.com. Yeah, and you can send me an email there. There's also my work cell in the footer. You can text me and call me that way. I also have an Instagram and a TikTok where I occasionally do like mental health tips and videos and stuff like that. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with social media,
I
so
hear
I'll
you.
just forget about it for a long time and then get jazzed about doing videos and do more. So, but there's some stuff on there as well. Yeah, and then I have a TEDx talk called "The Wisdom and Power of Your Feelings and How to Feel Them." So that goes a little bit more in depth with the kind of 1, 2, 3 step process of how to feel a feeling. So if you're interested more in kind of learning that process, you can, do a YouTube search on that. Yeah, and I do one-on-one sessions with clients. I also do like workshops that involve everything from, yeah, sound bath to guided meditation to movement therapy to partner connective exercises, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of ways. Yeah, we could work together.
Wonderful. Yeah, we'll definitely link the TEDx talk in the show notes. I loved your TEDx talk, by the way. It was great. I admittedly had known about it, and we got all those things, right? We're like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna watch that. I'm gonna
Yeah,
watch that."
so many things to watch.
Yeah, leading up to this interview, I watched it, and I was deeply moved and deeply touched by your TEDx talk, and was just in awe of your wisdom, and just your pure presence and embodiment in your talk too. It was really beautiful to
Mm,
witness.
mm. Thank you. That's really
Yeah,
sweet.
you're welcome. And let's see if there are any final words of encouragement for someone beginning to feel it, to heal it.
Mm. Final words of encouragement. You know how to do this. Your system knows how to do this. It's like ancient, it's how we evolved as a species. You know how to restore to balance. And yeah, sometimes we just get a little tangled up and we need some help, like untangling, so that our system can kind of naturally resolve itself. But that power is like completely within you and yeah, in your hands. And it's just a matter of remembering that and kind of getting back to that place and yeah, getting the support you need to remember that.
Wonderful, beautiful closing words.
Yeah. And I always love talking to you, Reva.
Yeah, I always enjoy our conversations too, Kim, and our time together. This has been such a real delight, and it just brings me so much joy to have you as the first guest on this show, and really kind of like, yeah, start this on a wonderful trajectory. So thank you for being
Mm-hmm.
here.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's an honor.
Yay. Well, everyone, we look forward to connecting with you again. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.
Clearing the pain from your womb, creating new life from your womb, building with the phases of the moon.